My entitled family demanded me to hand over my business. So I against them and cut them off. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I've worked my butt off for everything I have. Growing up, I didn't exactly get handed opportunities. My parents were the kind who played blatant favorites, and I was never their golden child. That title went to my older brother, who could do no wrong. He was their pride and joy while I was just there. Don't get me wrong, I love my brother in a way, but he's always had this sense of entitlement, probably because our parents have always bailed him out. When I was struggling to pay for college, they told me to figure it out because I needed to learn independence. But when my brother racked up thousands of dollars in credit card debt for partying, they paid it off without a second thought. I've spent most of my adult life trying to distance myself from that dynamic. I worked multiple jobs through college, started a small online business in my mid-20s, and slowly grew it into something successful. It's a boutique tech consulting company now, and while I'm not a millionaire, it's doing well enough to support me comfortably. I'm proud of what I've built, but apparently my success didn't sit well with my parents or my brother. It started subtly about a year ago. My parents began making comments about how nice it was that I'd built something stable and how my brother was still finding his footing. He's 35, by the way, and still living at home. I didn't think much of it at first, but then the comments got more pointed. Don't you think you could involve your brother in your business? My mom asked one day during dinner. What does that mean? I asked, genuinely confused. Well, she said, you could teach him the ropes, maybe give him a leadership role. I almost laughed. My brother has zero experience in tech or consulting. His last job was as a shift manager at a fast food place, and he quit after 2 months because it was too stressful. I tried to politely tell my mom that wasn't going to happen. She got huffy but let it go for the moment. Then came the family meeting. A few months ago, my parents called me over for dinner. When I got there, it wasn't just a casual meal. It was a full-blown ambush. My brother was there along with my parents, looking smug as hell. After some small talk, my dad cleared his throat and said, "We've been thinking about your business, and we have an idea that will benefit the family." I immediately felt uneasy. He went on to explain that since I was doing so well, it only made sense for me to bring my brother in, not just as an employee, but as a co-owner. They wanted me to sign over 50% of my business to him. I was floored. "You can't be serious," I said, looking around the table. "Oh, we're very serious," my mom chimed in. "Your brother deserves a chance to succeed, and you have the resources to help him." "He's my brother, not my charity case," I snapped. "I built this from nothing. He's never even asked me for advice or shown interest in what I do. Why would I just hand over half of my company?" My brother finally spoke up. "It's not just about you," he said, his tone dripping with entitlement. "You have a responsibility to the family. You've been lucky, and now it's time to share the wealth." Lucky. That word hit me like a slap. I told them there was no way I was giving up half of my business. That's when things got nasty. My mom started crying, saying she'd always known I was selfish. My dad accused me of tearing the family apart. My brother just sat there smirking like he'd already won. They tried every tactic in the book: guilt tripping, emotional blackmail, even outright threats. My dad said if I didn't do this, they'd never forgive me. My mom said they'd cut me out of their will. My brother hinted that he'd make my life difficult if I didn't comply. I told them they were insane if they thought they could bully me into giving away what I'd worked so hard for. That's when my dad dropped the real bombshell. "We already spoke to a lawyer," he said. "It's a simple process. We just need your signature." I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. What they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for something like this. Over the years, I'd heard enough of their entitlement to know they might try to pull something shady. So, when I started my business, I made sure to consult a lawyer and set everything up properly. My company's ownership is legally protected under an LLC, and any transfer of shares requires my explicit consent. Calmly, I told them this wasn't happening. That's when my brother lost it. He started yelling about how I'd always been the favorite, which was laughable, and how I didn't deserve what I had. He accused me of being heartless and said I'd regret it when I was old and alone. I stood up and said, If you think screaming at me will change my mind, you're delusional. You all made your choices, and I've made mine. I'm done. I left that night and haven't spoken to any of them since. My parents have been blowing up my phone, alternating between angry messages and pathetic pleas for forgiveness. My brother even had the audacity to show up at my office one day, demanding I reconsider. I had security escort him out. Last week, I found out through a mutual family friend that my parents have been bad-mouthing me to anyone who will listen, calling me greedy and ungrateful. But I don't care anymore. For the first time in my life, I feel free. Unfortunately, their entitlement didn't stop there. My brother began a smear campaign against me on social media, posting misleading stories and outright lies, portraying himself as a victim of my greed and cruelty. He even tagged my business accounts, trying to damage my reputation with my clients. I responded by issuing a professional statement on my company's platforms, clarifying the false claims without engaging in personal attacks. I also consulted a lawyer to send a cease and desist letter to him, warning him about the legal consequences of defamation. This move helped protect my business reputation and showed that I wouldn't be bullied into submission. Then, my parents tried to manipulate other family members against me by spreading a narrative that I was hoarding the family fortune and depriving my brother of a rightful opportunity. They contacted cousins, aunts, and uncles, painting me as the villain in a family drama. Instead of confronting each family member individually, I arranged a Zoom call where I calmly explained my side of the story, ensuring transparency. I shared my journey, the hard work involved, and my reasons for protecting my business. This direct communication helped me clarify misunderstandings and maintain some family relationships, despite my parents' efforts. In a more drastic step, my brother tried to interfere with my business directly by attempting to poach my employees. He offered them higher salaries and spread rumors that my company was unstable and I was planning to sell it soon. I held a company meeting where I openly discussed these tactics with my team. I reassured them about the stability and growth plans of the business and offered transparent insight into our financial health. I also enhanced employee benefits slightly to show my appreciation and commitment to their welfare, which helped in retaining their loyalty and trust. A month later, I received a letter from a lawyer claiming to represent my parents and brother, threatening a lawsuit for supposed unpaid family debts they alleged were used to start my business. A complete fabrication. I responded firmly through my legal counsel, providing clear financial records and documentation that showed no such debts existed. My lawyer prepared a comprehensive defense, indicating not only the baselessness of their claims, but also highlighting their attempts at extortion. We threatened a countersuit for harassment and malicious prosecution, which quickly led to the withdrawal of their legal threats. This whole ordeal was exhausting, but enlightening. I realized that my family's toxic behavior was not just about money or success. It was about control. They could not stand the fact that I was independent and beyond their reach. Cutting off my family wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. They showed me they don't see me as a person, just a resource to exploit. And as much as it hurts to walk away, I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who don't respect me. If you're dealing with entitled family members, my advice is this: stand your ground. You don't owe anyone your hard-earned success, no matter how much they try to guilt you into thinking otherwise. Life's too short to spend it on people who don't appreciate you. Instead, invest your time and energy into those who do. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.
My dad gave my trust fund to my perfect lawyer sister. Years later, my success was worth 100 times more. I'm 29. 10 years ago, I stood in my father's study watching him slide the trust fund papers across his mahogany desk to my sister Stacy. The familiar sting of his disapproval hung heavy in the air, but I'd grown numb to it over the years. $2 million, the inheritance that was supposed to be split between us, now belonged solely to her. The golden child, the one who had followed the path our parents laid out. "You're a disappointment," he said, his voice cold and final. The words weren't new. I'd been hearing them since I was 18 when I first dared to challenge his plans for my life. I could still vividly remember that day during my senior year of high school. I'd walked into this same study, clutching my early acceptance letter to MIT's computer science program. I was ecstatic. It was my dream school, the perfect place to nurture my passion for technology and programming, but my father had barely glanced at the letter before tearing it in half. "No daughter of mine is going to waste her life playing with computers," he'd declared. "You're going to law school like Stacy, like me, like 3 generations of this family before you." When I tried to protest, he threatened to cut off my college funding entirely. "It's Harvard Law or nothing," he'd said, his tone leaving no room for argument. So I went to Harvard, spending my days in lectures about contract law and tort reform while my heart yearned for lines of code. But I never gave up on my dreams. Every night after my law school assignments were done, I taught myself programming. My tiny dorm room became my sanctuary where I could finally be myself. Stacy, 2 years ahead of me at Harvard Law, would sometimes catch me coding late into the night. "You're going to burn out," she'd warn, but there was a hint of envy in her voice. She'd chosen the safe path, following our father's footsteps without question. I was choosing something harder to be myself. After graduation, I did the unthinkable. Instead of accepting the job offer at our father's firm, I took my savings and rented a tiny apartment in Manhattan. My father's reaction was explosive. "You're throwing away everything we've built for you," he'd shouted. My mother had cried, saying I was breaking their hearts. Stacy had stood silently by, watching as I packed my bags and walked away from their perfectly planned future. That tiny apartment became the birthplace of ATINA, adaptive trading heuristics and enhanced neural analytics. While my family thought I was playing with computers, I was building something revolutionary. Every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every moment of doubt, it all went into creating an AI system that could predict market movements with unprecedented accuracy. Now, standing in my father's study years later, watching him give away my share of the trust fund, I felt an odd sense of peace. The money didn't matter anymore. What they couldn't see was that I was on the verge of changing the global financial markets forever. "Will you at least join us for dinner?" my mother asked, her voice tinged with practiced concern. "Your father's reserved a table at Le Bernardin to celebrate Stacy's promotion to partner." I glanced around the study, taking in the wall of law degrees and prestigious awards. None of my accomplishments had ever made it onto these walls. I'd never belonged here. "I have a meeting," I said simply, turning to leave. Stacy called after me, but I was already walking out the door of the house that had never felt like home. The drive back to my apartment gave me time to reflect. That trust fund had never been about the money, it was about control, about forcing me to fit into their narrow definition of success. But I was done trying to squeeze myself into their mold. My phone buzzed with a message from Maya, my CTO and the first person who had truly believed in my vision. "VCs moved the meeting up to tomorrow. Ready?" I smiled, more than ready. By the time I reached my apartment, my frustration had transformed into laser-sharp focus. The screens in my home office flickered to life, displaying real-time data from ATINA's latest tests. The numbers were staggering. Our AI was outperforming traditional trading algorithms by 312%. Stacy's message popped up on my phone. "I'm sorry about Dad, you know how he gets. But the trust fund doesn't matter, right? You're doing fine with your computer stuff." I could hear the dismissive tone in her words, the same tone our family had always used when referring to my work. "Thanks, Stack. Enjoy dinner," I replied before turning back to my screens. Maya's face appeared on my monitor. "How did it go with the family?" she asked, her usually energetic demeanor subdued. "Dad signed the trust fund over to Stacy. They're celebrating at Le Bernardin right now." She shook her head. "Their loss, ready to show those VCs tomorrow what real success looks like." I studied ATINA's latest test results, feeling a surge of confidence. What if we don't take the VC money? Her eyes widened. What, Bailey, that's $50 million at a $300 million valuation. That's small thinking, I said, leaning back in my chair. We don't need VC funding. We could go public within a year, maintain complete control. A slow grin spread across Maya's face. You want to build an empire? No, I replied. I want to build something that even my father can't dismiss. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of activity. Instead of taking VC money, we leveraged their connections to partner with major financial institutions. We moved from my tiny apartment to a $40 million office space near Wall Street. ATINA's results continued to exceed our wildest expectations. Then came the day the senior partner at Thompson & Mitchell, Stacy's law firm, walked into our office. He didn't know I was her sister. She'd never mentioned me to her colleagues. Why would she? I was just the family disappointment who played with computers. The look on his face when he learned about our Goldman Sachs meeting was priceless. Suddenly, the family disappointment was someone worth knowing. Within hours, Stacy was texting me, "Why didn't you tell me? What exactly are you working on?" I let her message go unanswered. There would be time for family revelations later. Right now, we had a demonstration to prepare for. The Goldman Sachs team was waiting in our conference room, 5 executives in expensive suits trying not to look too eager. Their presence was a coup. Getting Goldman as an early partner would open every door in the financial world. The morning of our IPO, I stood in my closet considering what to wear. The Wall Street Journal sat on my desk, our company's impending public offering splashed across the front page. ATINA set to launch biggest tech IPO of the year. Expected valuation, $800 million. My phone had been buzzing for days, first Stacy, then my mother, and finally even my father had tried to reach out. I'd let their messages pile up unanswered. They'd all be at the ceremony anyway. The invitations had gone out weeks ago. The stock exchange was electric with anticipation. Financial reporters lined the entrance, cameras flashing as we arrived. Inside, our team had gathered near the podium along with representatives from every major bank and financial institution in the city. And there, in the front row, sat my family. My father's face was a study in conflicting emotions, pride warring with regret, confusion battling with awe. My mother kept dabbing at her eyes. Stacy just stared at me like she was seeing her sister for the first time. Bailey, my father stepped forward as I approached the podium. We had no idea. No, I said calmly, you didn't because you never asked. My speech was brief but pointed. I talked about building ATINA in that tiny apartment, about people calling it a waste of time, about believing in your vision even when no one else does. By lunch, my personal stake in the company was worth over $300 million, more than 100 times the trust fund my father had signed away. The aftermath was both gratifying and complicated. My father struggled to explain to his country club friends how his disappointing daughter had built an empire right under his nose. My mother suddenly wanted to be involved in every aspect of my life. Stacy approached me at the celebration dinner, her lawyer's composure cracking. Bailey, I'm so sorry, she began. All this time when you tried to tell us about your work, save it, I said, but not unkindly. You all saw what you wanted to see. Princess, my father cleared his throat, about the trust fund. Keep it, I interrupted. Stacy earned it just like I earned this. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is believe you'll fail. It makes success that much sweeter. The real surprise came when Stacy revealed she'd been secretly investing in companies that showed interest in our technology after Mr. Thompson's visit. I believed in you, she admitted, even if I didn't show it. Did you make money? I asked. She grinned. Enough to pay back that trust fund 10 times over. Good, I replied, because I'm going to need a lawyer I can trust for our next expansion phase, someone who understands both technology and family. Her eyes widened. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to be part of something bigger than both of us. What do you say, sis, ready to play with computers? The aftermath continued to unfold in interesting ways. My father, ever the corporate lawyer, started taking coding classes at night. Just trying to understand your world, princess, he'd say when I caught him struggling with basic programming concepts. It was his way of apologizing, of trying to bridge the gap he'd created. My mother transformed from someone who dismissed my computer hobby to my biggest cheerleader, though she still didn't quite understand what ATINA did. She'd clip every article about me and the company, proudly showing them to anyone who would listen. My daughter, she'd say, is revolutionizing the financial industry. The most profound change was in Stacy. Working as our chief legal officer, she finally understood why I'd fought so hard to follow my own path. She became a fierce advocate for tech education, even starting a foundation to help young girls pursue careers in STEM fields. The family dynamics had shifted completely. Instead of awkward dinners filled with disapproval, we now had animated discussions about technology, innovation, and the future. The study that had once been a symbol of my failure now displayed my achievements alongside the family's law degrees. But success didn't heal all wounds. Some scars from those years of dismissal and disapproval remained. I still remembered every cutting remark, every disappointed look, every time they'd chosen not to believe in me. Those memories kept me grounded, reminded me to always believe in others' dreams, no matter how unconventional they might seem. As ATINA continued to grow and evolve, I made sure our company culture reflected the lessons I'd learned. We encouraged innovation, valued different perspectives, and never dismissed someone's ideas just because they didn't fit the traditional mold. Success, I discovered, comes in many forms, and sometimes the most revolutionary ideas come from the people others underestimate.
My family controlled me my whole life. Then my girlfriend joined in, secretly spying on me to feed them updates. Now they're both gone for good. I'm 27, male. It all starts with my family. You know the type. Picture perfect from the outside, toxic as hell on the inside. My parents always had a favorite, my brother. I'll call him G. He's the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Me? I was just the backup plan. The disappointment. They'd parade around when they needed to look like good parents. For most of my life, I played along, tried to be the good son. I'd watch as G got everything: praise, money, opportunities, while I got the scraps. It became so painfully obvious that they didn't see me as anything more than a tool to prop up G's achievements. And every time I thought they couldn't hurt me more, they found a way to top themselves. The final straw came a year ago. G had screwed up, big time. He had messed up a huge project at his job, something that cost him his position. So, of course, my parents were desperate to fix it for him. And guess what their solution was? Me. They came to me asking, no, demanding, that I use my contacts in the industry to help him out. They didn't ask me how I was doing, didn't care about the job I just landed that I'd worked my ass off for. It was all about saving G. I said no. For the first time in my life, I put my foot down. And man, you'd have thought I'd committed some kind of unforgivable sin. My mom cried, my dad fumed, and G just stood there, smug, like he knew they'd figure something out for him eventually. When I told them I was done, that I couldn't take being their second choice anymore, they acted like I was the one betraying them. So I cut them off, blocked their numbers, stopped visiting for holidays, the whole 9 yards. I had to, for my own sanity. It was hard, don't get me wrong, but it was the healthiest decision I'd ever made. I felt lighter without their constant manipulation hanging over my head. For the past year, I'd been rebuilding my life. I was focusing on my career, making new friends, and most importantly, I had my girlfriend E. She was my rock. We'd been together for 2 years, and she was there through it all. The drama with my family, the emotional fallout, everything. I trusted her more than anyone. I thought she had my back. But last week, everything fell apart, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It started with small things. You would make offhand comments about my parents, things I hadn't told her in months, Or she'd bring up G in casual conversation, even though I hadn't mentioned him since I cut them off. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I'd said something in passing, or maybe she just remembered more than I gave her credit for. But then she started getting weird. She'd ask me specific questions about my life, who I was hanging out with, where I'd been, if I'd run into anyone from my family. It wasn't until I came home early from work one day that everything started to click. He was on the phone, and she didn't hear me come in. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the way she was talking made me freeze in the doorway. He's been fine, she was saying, her voice low. Yeah, I'll let you know if he says anything. No, he hasn't mentioned wanting to reconnect yet. I stood there, my heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. She was talking about me, but who the hell was she talking to? I'll try to bring up G again, she continued. Maybe he's softened up. I don't know, but I'll keep pushing. That's when it hit me. She was talking to my parents. My parents. The same people I'd cut off. The same ones who had treated me like I was expendable. And E, the one person I thought I could trust, had been feeding them information this entire time. I must have made some kind of noise because he whipped around and saw me standing there. The color drained from her face. Who are you talking to? I asked, my voice cold and unfamiliar even to me. She hung up the phone quickly, stuffing it in her pocket like that would somehow erase what I just heard. Nobody, she said, her voice shaky. Don't lie to me, E. Who the hell were you just talking to? She hesitated, then sighed. Rubbing her temples like this was somehow my fault. It's not what you think, okay? Oh, really? Because it sounds a hell of a lot like you've been spying on me for my parents. The same people I told you I wanted nothing to do with. I wasn't spying, she snapped. Like that made it any better. I was just keeping them updated. They're worried about you. Worried about me? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They don't give a damn about me. They only care about G, and you know that. So why are you working for them? She shifted on her feet, avoiding my eyes. They asked me to stay close to you, make sure you were okay. They just wanted to know what was going on in your life. I let out a bitter laugh. And you thought it was a good idea to go behind my back and feed them information? How long has this been going on? Her silence was answer enough. Months. Maybe the entire time since I'd cut them off. I felt sick. This woman who I trusted more than anyone had been betraying me in the worst possible way. And for what? To keep my parents happy? The same parents who had never once been there for me when it mattered? You should have told me, I said, my voice raw. You should have told me the moment they reached out to you. I didn't want to make things worse, she said, her voice small, as if she was the victim here. I thought I was helping. Helping who? I snapped. Because you sure as hell weren't helping me. She didn't have an answer for that. She just stood there, looking at me with those wide, pleading eyes, like she expected me to forgive her. Like she thought I'd just sweep this under the rug, because she meant well. But I couldn't. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. You need to leave, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. What? She looked at me like I'd slapped her. You're seriously kicking me out over this? I was just trying to. To what? I cut her off. Lie to me? Spy on me? Betray me? Yeah, I'm kicking you out, E. I can't trust you. Not after this. She stood there for a moment, like she was waiting for me to change my mind. And when I didn't, she huffed and grabbed her things, muttering under her breath the entire time. She slammed the door on her way out, and just like that, she was gone. But the damage was already done. The next few days were a blur. I was numb. I didn't know how to process the fact that the one person I thought I could trust had been lying to me for months. That my parents, who I had finally managed to escape, had found a way back into my life through her. It felt like I'd been hit by a truck, and I couldn't even find the words to explain how deeply it hurt. Then the text started. From my parents, of course. We're worried about you, one said. We just want to talk. You can't shut us out forever, said another. They didn't understand. Or maybe they did, and they just didn't care. Either way, I wasn't responding. I was done playing their game. A part of me wanted to confront them, to call them up and demand to know why they couldn't just leave me alone. Why they had to go behind my back, using E like some kind of pawn in their twisted game. But what would that accomplish? It would just give them more power, more control. So I did the only thing I could do. I blocked their numbers. Again, I wish I could say that made me feel better. But the truth is, I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of it. The betrayal, the lies, the fact that the people I should have been able to trust the most were the ones who hurt me the worst. I don't know where I go from here. I'm rebuilding again. I'm not sure how long it'll take for me to trust someone again, or if I ever will. But one thing's for sure, I'm done with my family. For good this time. No more second chances, no more letting them sneak back into my life. I'm finally free. And as for E, I still don't know if she fully understands what she did. Maybe she thought she was doing the right thing. Maybe she convinced herself that she was helping. But in the end, intentions don't matter. Actions do. And her actions prove that she wasn't on my side. Not really. Maybe she was on her own side, trying to stay in good graces with everyone. But in doing so, she stabbed me in the back. In the days after she left, I started piecing everything together. Small details that I should have noticed but was too blind to see at the time. The way she would ask about my job, but always seemed more interested in how I was getting along with my family. How she'd casually drop in comments about G, trying to see if I'd softened toward him. I even remembered one time, months ago, when we ran into an old family friend and she had this look on her face like she'd been caught. It wasn't just spying, it was manipulation, plain and simple. She was pushing me toward them the entire time, slowly, like turning the dial up on a stove so I wouldn't notice until I was burning. And maybe that's the part that hurt the most. She didn't just betray me by feeding them information. She tried to control the way I thought, the way I felt. She didn't trust me enough to make my own decisions. Or worse, she didn't want me to make my own decisions. She wanted me back under their thumb, where she was comfortable and didn't have to deal with the messy reality of me cutting them off. In her mind, maybe it was easier if I just forgave my parents, if I could just be a happy little family again. But she didn't understand that what she wanted wasn't possible. Not for me. Not after everything I went through growing up, constantly being compared to G, constantly feeling like I was less. I spent my entire childhood trying to prove that I was worth something, and it never mattered. They never saw me as anything more than a tool to help G. And she, my girlfriend, was complicit in that. I thought I'd moved on from the pain of my family. But this betrayal cut deeper than I expected. It brought it all back, made me question whether I'd ever really escape. Was I cursed to keep running into people who would push me back toward that toxic environment? Who would try to convince me that I was the problem for walking away? It was like ripping open an old wound that never quite healed. I spent hours thinking about it, going over every moment we'd had together, trying to figure out if I had missed something crucial from the beginning. Did she always have an agenda? Was it always about my parents? Or did it just become that after they got to her? I couldn't decide which was worse, the idea that she was always working against me, or the idea that my parents had been able to manipulate her, just like they tried to manipulate me. The funny thing is, looking back, there were warning signs, little moments that didn't feel right but I brushed off because I loved her and trusted her. I told myself she had my best interests at heart. But she was always a little too eager for me to make up with my family, always pushing me to be the bigger person, even when I knew that meant sacrificing my own happiness for theirs. I thought she was being supportive, but now I see that it was something else entirely. She was always trying to steer me toward what she thought was best, not what I needed. A couple of days after he left, I got a call from an unknown number. I normally don't answer those, but for some reason, I did. And guess who it was? My mom. I don't know how she got through the block. Maybe she used someone else's phone. But there she was trying to sound all concerned and motherly. "We're just worried about you, honey," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "We haven't heard from you in so long, and we know how hard things have been for you. We're family, and we should be there for each other." I felt a familiar anger rise in my chest, the audacity of her to act like she cared, like she was the victim here. I couldn't hold back anymore. You don't get to act concerned now, I snapped. Not after everything you've done. And by the way, using my girlfriend to spy on me? Real nice. That's exactly the kind of toxic crap that made me cut you off in the first place. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then she sighed, like she was tired of dealing with a stubborn child. She was just trying to help, my mom said, her voice losing that fake sweetness. We were worried about you. You've been so distant, and you won't talk to us. We had no choice. No choice? I laughed bitterly. You had plenty of choices. You could have respected my boundaries. You could have left me alone instead of trying to manipulate me through her. Boundaries? You're our son, she snapped, her patience clearly wearing thin. You don't get to just walk away from your family. That's exactly what I did, I said coldly, and I'll keep doing it. You're never going to control me again. With that, I hung up. I blocked that number too, just to be safe. But the conversation left me rattled. It wasn't just the manipulation. It was the way she refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing. In her mind, they were always the victims. And I was the ungrateful son who couldn't see how much they loved me. But I saw it clearly now. Their version of love came with strings attached, conditions, expectations. It wasn't about me. It was about control. I wish I could say that hanging up on her felt good, like some kind of closure. But it didn't. Not really. It just felt empty. Because no matter how many times I cut them off, they'd always find a way to weasel back into my life. Through guilt, through manipulation, or through other people like E. And I realized then that I couldn't just cut them off physically. I had to let go emotionally too. That was the hard part. The part one wasn't sure I'd ever fully manage. A few weeks passed and I started focusing on myself again. Therapy helped. I talked through the anger, the betrayal, the lingering guilt that maybe somehow I was the one in the wrong. But every time I talked it out, the more I realized just how deeply I'd been manipulated. Not just by my parents, but by E as well. They were all part of the same game, one I never wanted to play in the first place. One night, as I was scrolling through my phone, I got a notification from E. Apparently, she'd made a new account and tried to reach out. Her message was long, full of apologies and explanations. She said she never meant to hurt me, that she thought she was doing the right thing by staying in touch with my parents. She said she missed me, and that she hoped we could talk, maybe work things out. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because how do you rebuild trust after something like that? How do you go back to pretending everything's fine when someone you loved so deeply showed you they were willing to betray you so easily? I don't know if I'll ever forgive her, or my parents. But what I do know is that I'm done letting other people dictate my life. I'm done being the puppet in their game. For once, I'm putting myself first. And if you've watched this far, thanks for sticking with me through the mess. If you've got family drama like mine, just remember, you don't owe anyone anything, especially not your peace of mind. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. My ex dumped me for not paying for her plastic surgery. Now, she came crawling back, but I'm already done. I'm 34. Now, I'm dealing with the aftermath of a relationship that went from dream to nightmare faster than I could process. You know that moment when you realize something that seemed perfect was actually a carefully constructed illusion? I met Alex at a friend's housewarming party. She was fun, supportive, and had this magnetic charisma that drew people in. When she laughed, her whole face lit up, and I found myself wanting to make her laugh more and more. In those early days, everything about her seemed to complement my personality perfectly. Where I was methodical and grounded, she brought spontaneity and excitement. She seemed to appreciate my practical approach to life, often commenting on how refreshing it was to be with someone who had their act together. We'd spend evenings planning future adventures or just talking about life, and everything felt right. We started dating seriously, and within months, we were practically inseparable. Our friends joked about how perfectly matched we were. We started talking about traveling together, maybe moving in by the end of the year. I remember thinking I'd finally found my person. someone who appreciated my practical nature and shared my values. Or so I thought. The shift happened so gradually I almost missed it. It started with little comments about her appearance, casual remarks about wishing her nose was different or wanting a more dramatic figure. I did what any supportive partner would do, reassured her that she was beautiful just as she was. Looking back, I should have noticed how these comments started becoming more frequent, how her Instagram feed slowly filled with before and after plastic surgery transformations. But when you're in love, you tend to overlook the warning signs, don't you? One evening, she came over with a stack of brochures. Not travel brochures or home decorating ideas, surgical brochures. She laid them out on my coffee table like she was presenting a business plan: nose job, liposuction, breast augmentation. The whole works. Her eyes were bright with excitement as she explained her vision for her transformation. She had it all planned out, down to the specific surgeon she wanted to use. I tried to be understanding. If this was something that mattered to her, I wanted to support her. But then came the real bombshell. She wanted me to pay for everything. Not chip in, not split the cost. She wanted me to take out a massive loan in my name to fund her entire transformation. The total amount she was asking for was more than I'd spent on my car. When I asked why she couldn't take out the loan herself, she shrugged it off. "Oh, my credit shot from some stuff in the past," she said casually, like she was explaining why she couldn't find her keys. "But think of it as an investment in our future together. When I look the way I want, everything will be better for both of us. I'll be more confident, more successful. We'll both benefit." The entitlement in her voice was staggering. "If you truly love me, you'll do this," she said, staring me down like she was issuing a challenge. I tried explaining that going into debt for multiple cosmetic surgeries wasn't a small ask. I brought up the medical risks, the financial implications, but she brushed off my concerns like they were lint on her sleeve. "You're being paranoid," she'd say. "Plenty of couples take out loans for important things. This is no different than financing a wedding or a house. Except it was different, very different, and we both knew it." Our once loving relationship devolved into daily arguments about money. She started calling me stingy, unromantic, claiming I was standing in the way of her happiness. She'd send me links to stories about men who had invested in their partner's transformations, suggesting I wasn't measuring up to these supposed romantic heroes. The emotional manipulation became more obvious. She'd swing between guilt-tripping and anger, sometimes in the same conversation. One moment she'd be crying about how this was her only chance at true happiness. The next she'd be accusing me of deliberately holding her back out of jealousy or control. Finally, after weeks of this escalating pressure, she dropped an ultimatum: "Take out the loan and schedule the surgeries, or I'm done." She delivered it over dinner, as casually as if she was asking me to pass the salt. It felt surreal. This woman I'd shared so much with was essentially putting a price tag on our relationship. Despite my feelings for her, I couldn't ignore such a massive red flag. I refused. Her response was immediate. She blocked me on everything, gathered her things from my apartment, and vanished from my life as if the past year meant nothing. It was like someone had flipped a switch, and the loving, caring person I knew was replaced by a complete stranger. The weeks that followed were a blur of second-guessing and processing. Friends helped me see the warning signs I'd missed: her occasional comments about how real men support their partners financially, her subtle digs at my spending habits, her constant emphasis on grand gestures as proof of love. One friend even mentioned how Alex had once bragged about getting an ex to buy her an expensive car. I dismissed it as a joke at the time. I threw myself into work, trying to move past the relationship. I started going to the gym more, reconnecting with friends I'd somewhat neglected during our relationship. Slowly, I started feeling like myself again. Then, a month later, a text from an unknown number: "Hey, can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet at a local cafe. I told myself it was for closure, but part of me still cared about her and wanted to understand what had happened to us. She walked in wearing a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Before I could even ask how she'd been, She launched into this elaborate story about how she'd been influenced by toxic friends, how she missed me, how she'd learned her lesson. She claimed her friends had filled her head with unrealistic expectations, making her forget what really mattered. But as we talked, it became clear nothing had really changed. Her idea of compromise was taking out a smaller loan or starting with just one procedure. She was still pushing for me to finance her surgeries, just on a slightly reduced scale. When I pointed this out, she tried to spin it as me being unreasonable for not meeting her halfway. Here's the kicker, and this is something I only discovered later through our mutual friend. Alex spent that month trying to secure financing elsewhere. She'd approached her family first, spinning a story about needing the surgeries for her mental health. They'd refused. Then she'd gone to several other friends, each time adjusting her pitch based on what she thought would convince them. She'd even tried to get approved for medical loans on her own, but her credit was exactly as bad as she'd admitted to me. I was her last resort, not her first choice for reconciliation. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. All those tearful messages about missing me, all those promises about changing, they were just another manipulation tactic. She didn't want me back. She wanted my credit score. My friend told me Alex had been quite open about her strategy with certain friends, convinced that I would eventually give in if she applied enough emotional pressure. She'd even bragged about how she could handle me, as if our entire relationship had been some kind of manipulation game from the start. When I confronted her about this during our cafe meeting, she tried every trick in the book. She cried about how close she was to her breakthrough. She promised to pay me back someday, though she couldn't explain how. She even tried to spin it as me being afraid of commitment or lacking ambition. "Don't you want me to be the best version of myself?" she asked, tears welling up in her eyes. I stayed firm. A relationship isn't about buying someone's transformation. That's not love. That's exploitation. The aftermath was predictable. She flooded my phone with messages ranging from apologetic to accusatory. "You're heartless," one would say, followed by "I'm sorry, let's just talk more." Each message only confirmed I'd made the right choice in walking away. She tried different approaches, sending mutual friends to talk to me, showing up at places she knew I frequented, even attempting to contact my family through social media. Each time, her message was the same. If I really loved her, I would help her achieve her dreams. The final straw came when she created a social media post heavily implying that I had promised to help her and then abandoned her. She didn't name me directly, but everyone who knew us understood who she was talking about. That's when I decided to block her on every platform and cut off all mutual contacts who might feed information back to her. She's still out there, posting selfies with captions about needing a real man who invests in her dreams. Sometimes friends show me her posts, thinking I want to know what she's up to. I don't. I've learned that sometimes the best response is no response at all. What's really interesting is how this experience changed my perspective on relationships. I used to think love was about grand gestures and sacrifices, about doing whatever it takes to make your partner happy. Now I understand that real love includes respect for yourself as well as your partner. It's about building something together, not bankrupting yourself to fulfill someone else's fantasies. Looking back, I realized that what felt like heartbreak at first was actually relief in disguise. I dodged a bullet that could have destroyed not just my finances, but my self-respect. These days, I'm focusing on my career and personal growth, and I've learned to spot the difference between someone who wants to share a life with me and someone who just wants to use my credit score to fund their fantasies. The whole experience taught me something valuable about boundaries and self-worth. It's easy to get caught up in someone else's dreams and lose sight of your own values. But at the end of the day, if someone measures your love by the size of the loan you're willing to take out for them, that's not love at all. That's just a transaction disguised as a relationship. I'm sharing this story not because I'm bitter, but because I hope it might help someone else recognize these red flags before they get too invested. Sometimes the most expensive relationship is the one you avoid, and sometimes the highest price you can pay for love is the one you refuse to pay at all. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. My dad and stepmom tried to force me out of my own house for my pregnant stepsister. When I refused, they changed the locks. I'm 28, male, and I'm honestly still trying to wrap my head around what just happened. I live in the house my mom left me when she passed 5 years ago. It's nothing huge, just a modest three-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. My mom bought it with her hard-earned savings, and she made sure I knew it would be mine when she was gone. She was always the only stable person in my life, especially after my dad remarried, well, her. My dad, he's not bad, just neglectful. He wasn't really around much after the divorce, and when he was, it was always about him and his new wife. The only time he seemed to care was when something benefited them. And when I say them, I mean my stepmom and her daughter, S. S is my stepsister, 25 and pregnant. That in itself isn't the issue. I've got nothing against her for being pregnant, but the entitlement that radiates off her is unreal. She's the type that always expects life to hand her things on a silver platter, because frankly, that's what my dad and stepmom have done since day one. They spoil her rotten. If she wants something, she gets it. And now they've got their eyes set on my house. It all started a couple of months ago when S's boyfriend left her. I wasn't surprised. The guy always seemed checked out. But of course, in her eyes, she's the victim. I heard about the breakup from my dad, who said S was devastated and needed family support. My dad and stepmom were all over it, catering to her every need, taking her in, cooking her meals, and comforting her. That's fine. I get it. She's family and she's having a rough time. But then one day, my dad called me over for a chat, which, in my experience, never ends well. I showed up, expecting to hear something about helping out or maybe giving us a bit of cash. What I didn't expect was what came next. "We've been thinking," my dad started, sitting at the head of the kitchen table, his wife beside him, looking smug as always. "S needs stability right now, and it's getting a bit cramped at our place with the baby on the way." I didn't like where this was going. "Okay," I said slowly, eyeing the two of them. Stepmom piped up, her voice as sweet as artificial sugar. "We were thinking that, since you've got this big house all to yourself, it would make sense for us to move in. You could stay somewhere smaller. Maybe an apartment?" I blinked. I thought they were joking. "Wait, what?" My dad nodded like it was the most logical thing in the world. "It's not like you need all that space. You're single, no kids. It'd be easier for you to move, and S could use the extra room for the baby. We've already looked into some places for you, just in case you're interested." Just like that, no build-up, no negotiation. They were asking me to leave my own house, the house my mom left me, so that S could live there rent-free because her boyfriend bailed on her. I sat there for a moment, stunned. "You can't be serious," I finally said, my voice shaking with disbelief. My stepmom's smile faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. "It's just a suggestion, honey. We thought you'd want to help family out in their time of need." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "You want me to move out of my house so S can live there with her baby? What happens when she finds another guy or decides she doesn't like it? You expect me to just give up everything?" "We're not saying give up," my dad said quickly. "Just think about the baby. It's the right thing to do." "Right, the baby. The one that's not even born yet. The one that's suddenly more important than the fact that this house is mine. What about my life? My job? I've been building my life here. I've made this place my own. You're asking me to just throw that away?" S walked in at that moment, wearing that same smug expression I've grown to despise. She looked at me, then at her mom and my dad, and I knew. She was in on this from the start. "It's not like you can't afford to move," she said, crossing her arms over her growing belly. "You've got savings, right?" I shot her a look that could have melted steel. "What's that got to do with anything? This is my house, not yours, not Dad's, mine." S huffed, and for a moment I saw the mask slip. "Well, don't be so selfish. You don't have a family to think about." "I do." "Selfish. Me. The one who's being asked to give up his home." I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice level. Just because I don't have kids doesn't mean my life doesn't matter. At that point, things escalated. My stepmom jumped in, accusing me of being heartless, saying that family helps family and that my mom would be disappointed in me. That hit a nerve and I snapped. "Don't you dare bring my mom into this," I growled, standing up from the table so fast that my chair nearly toppled over. "She left this house to me because she knew you'd pull some crap like this. You think I didn't notice how you and Dad treated her? How you slowly edged her out of my life until she was gone? You have no right to talk about her." Silence. I could see my dad's face flushing, but he didn't say anything. He never did when things got uncomfortable. He let my stepmom handle it, like always. "She's just trying to help," my dad finally said, his voice weak. "Help?" I scoffed. "You call this helping? Trying to guilt me into giving up my house because your precious daughter screwed up her life? That's not helping, Dad. That's manipulation." S shot back with, "It's not manipulation. You're being dramatic. I need this more than you do. You'll find another place and you'll be fine." I couldn't believe the audacity. "You're not getting this house," I said firmly, turning to leave. "This conversation is over." But it wasn't. Not by a long shot. Over the next few weeks, the pressure mounted. My dad and stepmom kept calling, showing up at the house unannounced, always with some new angle to convince me. Seven started playing the victim card harder, saying she was stressed out and needed a stable environment for the baby. They even had the nerve to show me listings for apartments nearby, just in case I changed my mind. I didn't. Then came the real kicker. One afternoon, I came home from work and the locks on my front door had been changed. I stood there, staring at my own door, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. I tried my key again. Nothing. At first, I thought I was losing it, but then I noticed a note stuck to the door. "We've changed the locks for S's safety. Please contact us to discuss this." That's when I lost it. I called my dad, furious, demanding to know what the hell was going on. He tried to play it off like they were doing me a favor, saying it was temporary, just until we worked something out. I wasn't having any of it. I threatened to call the cops, and that's when my dad's tone changed. He started begging me not to, saying that it would look bad, that we could resolve this as a family. But I wasn't backing down this time. I told him flat out that if the locks weren't changed back by the end of the day, I was filing a police report for trespassing. After that, things moved quickly. The locks were changed back, but the damage was done. I couldn't trust them anymore. I started looking into legal options to make sure this wouldn't happen again. That's when my lawyer told me something I wasn't expecting. During our conversation, I mentioned that I felt like they were going to try and take the house from me, and he warned me that my father had already inquired about contesting my mom's will months ago. He hadn't actually filed anything yet, but he'd spoken to a lawyer about trying to get the house declared as family property instead of my inheritance. I was furious. This whole time, they'd been planning it. They thought they could twist the law and bully me into giving up my home, but my lawyer assured me that my mom's will was airtight. They didn't have a leg to stand on. I confronted my dad the next day. "So you've been planning to take my house from me all along?" I asked, my voice cold as ice. His face paled, but he didn't deny it. "I didn't want it to come to that," he muttered. "But she's in a tough spot. She needs the house more than you do. It's for the baby." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You were going to take your own son to court over something, Mom? Left to me and her will? Just so your stepdaughter could have an easy life?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. That was the worst part. My own father couldn't even look me in the face after betraying me like this. "I didn't want it to go that far," he said quietly. "But you weren't being reasonable. S's family too. You've got to understand. I just wanted to make sure she and the baby were taken care of. By taking everything from me," I snapped, feeling the anger bubbling up again. "You don't get to decide what's reasonable. You try to take the one thing my mom left me, and you expect me to just roll over because S messed up? You've been neglecting me for years, and now this? You're unbelievable." "Look, I know it's not fair," he said, finally looking up, but there was no remorse in his eyes, just frustration. but I thought you'd be able to find another place. I thought maybe in time you'd understand. I'll never understand. I shot back, and I'll never forgive you for this. He opened his mouth to respond, but I wasn't interested in hearing any more of his excuses. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. That was it. The last shred of whatever father-son relationship we had left was gone. In the weeks that followed, I took extra precautions to make sure they couldn't try anything else. My lawyer helped me lock everything down. My house, my finances, everything. I made sure the house title was solidly in my name with no loopholes or gaps for them to exploit. I even looked into getting a restraining order, but my lawyer advised against it unless they escalated further. And while I hoped that would be the end of it, I knew better. S didn't give up easily. She showed up at my place one day, acting like nothing had happened, as if we hadn't just been through months of manipulation and deceit. She stood there on my doorstep, belly out, looking at me like I was the villain in her story. "I really don't get why you're being so difficult," she said, her voice laced with frustration. "I thought family was supposed to stick together." I stared at her, utterly speechless. Difficult? I'm being difficult? You tried to steal my house, and you're acting like I'm the one in the wrong? S rolled her eyes. Steal is a strong word. It's not like you can't afford to move, and I actually need the space, for the baby. There it is again, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. Everything's about you and that baby. Do you even hear yourself? Do you realize how entitled you sound? Her face tightened, and I could tell she wasn't used to people calling her out. Entitled? Are you serious? I'm about to be a single mom, and all I'm asking for is a little help. You're acting like this is some huge injustice when all I'm asking for is a roof over my head. I'm not obligated to give you anything, I said, my voice firm, especially not my home. You got yourself into this situation, and it's not my responsibility to bail you out. S crossed her arms over her chest, glaring at me. You're going to regret this. Dad already thinks you're being heartless. You're pushing everyone away for a stupid house. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't get it, do you? It's not just a house. It's everything I have left of my mom. She made sure I'd have this place, and you and your mom are trying to take that away from me because you can't handle the fact that life didn't go the way you planned. Well, tough luck, S. I'm not going anywhere. She stared at me for a long moment, her face twisted with anger and disbelief. Fine, she finally spat. But when you're all alone and you don't have anyone left, don't say I didn't warn you. I closed the door in her face before she could say anything else. That was the last time I spoke to her. After that, things finally calmed down. My dad and stepmom must have realized they weren't getting anywhere with me because they stopped calling, stopped showing up unannounced. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that S eventually moved in with a new boyfriend, a guy with money, apparently. I guess her desperate need for my house wasn't as critical as she made it out to be. And you know what? I don't regret a thing. My dad and stepmom haven't spoken to me since. S moved on with her life, and I've done the same. I still live in the house, and every time I walk through the front door, I feel a sense of peace, knowing I stood my ground. I kept what was mine, what my mom wanted me to have, and no amount of manipulation or guilt tripping could take that away from me. Yeah, it hurts that my dad chose them over me. It hurts that he thought it was okay to try and steal from his own son to help his stepdaughter. But I've learned something through all this. Sometimes you have to cut people out of your life to protect yourself, even if they're family. Blood doesn't entitle anyone to anything, and you don't owe anyone just because they share your DNA. So, if you're ever in a situation where someone, family or not, trying to take advantage of you, remember this. You don't have to give in. You don't owe anyone your peace, your home, or your life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. My ex-wife tried to reconcile after she cheated on me. I refused. So, she sabotaged my new marriage. I'm 38, divorced, and in a much better place than I was 6 years ago. Back then, I was married to a woman who, on the surface, seemed like the perfect partner. She was charming, ambitious, and had this way of making people believe she always knew what she was doing. But behind closed doors, she cared more about appearances and control than building something real. Our marriage fell apart when I found out she was cheating on me with some guy who, for this story, I'll call Pete. Pete was flashy, successful, and everything she thought I wasn't. She left me for him, and to make matters worse, she tried to bleed me dry in the divorce. She demanded ridiculous amounts of money, claiming she'd supported me emotionally through my career. Even though we both worked full-time, she spent most of her earnings on designer bags and spa weekends. It wasn't until my lawyer dug up her hidden debts that she backed off. In the end, I got to keep what was mine, and she walked away with Pete. I thought that was the last I'd ever see of her. Fast forward 6 years. I've moved on, both emotionally and financially. I'm in a healthy relationship with Sarah, who's everything my ex wasn't: kind, grounded, and genuinely supportive. I've done well for myself at work, climbed the ladder, and even bought a house that feels like home, not just a showpiece. Life was good, and I had no reason to think about my ex. Then, out of the blue, she tried to make a reappearance. It started small: friend requests on Facebook and Instagram. I ignored them. Then came the texts: "Hey, how are you? And can we talk?" I blocked all. But then she got creative. She emailed one of my colleagues, claiming we were still on good terms and asking if they could help her find a job. She even CC'd me in the email, probably thinking it would pressure me into helping. I wasn't having it. I called my colleague immediately, explained the situation, and sent her a reply: "Don't use my name to advance yourself. This is completely inappropriate." That shut her down for a while. I found out through mutual friends what had happened. Pete had gambled away their savings, cheated on her, and then left her with nothing. She had to move back in with her parents, which was ironic considering they always looked down on me for not being successful enough for their daughter. I figured she was reaching out because she thought I'd bail her out. No chance. I'd moved on, and she was not my responsibility. But she didn't give up. A few weeks later, I heard she was telling mutual friends that I owed her for everything she gave up during our marriage. At a dinner party, she actually had the nerve to say, "I let him keep everything in the divorce because I didn't want to fight over money." I kept my cool and replied, "That's not how I remember it. I recall you withdrawing your demands after my lawyer found your hidden credit cards and overdue bills." She went quiet after that, but I could tell she was seething. Then she escalated. She showed up at my office unannounced, acting like she was just there to catch up. But it didn't take long for her to start talking about how it would be easier for both of us if we shared expenses again. She even suggested she could help out around the house if I let her move back in. I stared at her, completely dumbfounded, before saying, "That's not happening. You made your choices, and I've moved on." She kept pushing, so I called security to escort her out. It was humiliating for her, but I wasn't going to let her bulldoze her way into my life again. The final straw came at a family barbecue last weekend. My cousin invited me and Sarah, and we were looking forward to a relaxed afternoon. What I didn't know was that my cousin's wife had invited my ex because she felt sorry for her. When I saw her walk in, my stomach sank. I considered leaving, but Sarah said, "We're not letting her ruin our day. If she starts anything, we'll handle it." It didn't take long for her to make her move. She started chatting with Sarah, all fake smiles and overly familiar comments like, "Oh, he used to love this song, and he's always been picky about his food, hasn't he?" Sarah handled it well, but I could tell she wasn't amused. Then, during a lull in the conversation, my ex stood up and said loudly, "I'm so glad we're all mature enough to move past old wounds. Forgiveness is such a beautiful thing, don't you think?" She looked directly at me, smiling like she'd just delivered a Hallmark card. I wasn't going to let her spin her narrative unchallenged. I said, "Forgiveness is fine, but let's not confuse it with forgetting. You didn't make a mistake. You made a series of choices that destroyed our marriage. I've moved on, and I suggest you do the same." The entire table went silent. She looked shocked, like she didn't expect me to push back. Instead of backing down, she launched into a rant about how unfair I was being and how everyone deserves a second chance. She even tried to guilt me by saying, "You used to love me. Doesn't that mean anything?" Before I could respond, Sarah cut in. Her voice was calm but cold. Redemption isn't about demanding second chances. It's about changing your behavior and earning trust. From what I've seen, you're still stuck in the same patterns. That shut her up. She stormed off a few minutes later, muttering about how cruel I was. But she wasn't done. After the barbecue, she tried to pull my cousin's wife aside to get sympathy, saying I'd humiliated her. My cousin overheard and told her, "No one forced you to come here or bring up the past. You did this to yourself." She left shortly after, but the drama didn't stop there. A few days later, she started calling my family members to complain about how unfairly she'd been treated. She told my mom that I was holding a grudge and refusing to help her out, even though I was in a position to. My mom, bless her, shut her down immediately. She said, "He's happy now, and that's all that matters to me. Don't drag me into this." My ex then tried to guilt trip my dad, saying, "I always thought of you as a father figure. Can't you talk to him?" My dad, who's never been one for drama, simply said, "I think you should stop calling," and hang up. Her entitlement didn't stop there. She managed to get Sarah's phone number, probably through social media, and texted her a long, rambling message about how she hoped they could put the past behind them and work together for my sake. Sarah showed me the message and said, "Do you want to handle this, or should I?" I told her to go ahead. She replied, "There's nothing for us to work on. Your issues are yours alone. Stop contacting me." Then she blocked the number. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. It was some half-baked attempt at a legal threat, claiming that the events at the barbecue had caused her emotional distress and demanding an apology and financial compensation. I couldn't believe the audacity. I forwarded the letter to my lawyer, who drafted a formal response threatening counterclaims for harassment and defamation if she pursued it further. Unsurprisingly, I never heard back. Her next move was to start spreading rumors. Mutual friends told me she was telling anyone who'd listened that Sarah was a gold digger and that I'd changed since being with her. At first, I thought about ignoring it, but then I realized that letting her run her mouth unchecked wasn't an option. Sarah and I went to a mutual friend's party where some of the rumors had been circulating. When someone brought it up, Sarah just laughed and said, "Wow, if I'm a gold digger, I must be doing a terrible job. He still makes me split the bill on date nights." Everyone laughed, and the rumors died on the spot. The last straw came when she posted a long, melodramatic rant on Facebook, tagging me and Sarah. She accused me of abandoning her when she needed me most and called Sarah a manipulative homewrecker. The post was filled with lies, but it was also so over the top that most people saw right through it. Still, I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. I wrote my own post, keeping it short and to the point. Some people use social media to air grievances instead of taking accountability for their actions. I won't be engaging in public drama, but for those wondering, my life is good, my relationships are strong, and I have no regrets about the decisions I've made. Her post backfired spectacularly. Dozens of people commented in support of me and Sarah, with many calling her out for her behavior. Within hours, she deleted the post, but the damage to her reputation was already done. Looking back, I can't say I'm surprised by how things unfolded. My ex has always been the type to avoid accountability and look for shortcuts, even if it means stepping on other people to get what she wants. What surprised me was how much stronger I'd become since our divorce. Every time she tried to manipulate me, I pushed back harder, and every time she tried to guilt me, I refused to let it stick. Sarah has been a rock through all of this, and I'm more grateful for her than ever. She never let my ex get under her skin, and she always reminded me that we didn't have to put up with anyone's nonsense, no matter how loud or persistent they were. We've come out of this closer than ever, and I know now that I'll never let anyone like my ex back into my life. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. People only have as much power over you as you give them. My ex tried every trick in the book to worm her way back into my life, but I wasn't the same person she'd left behind. I'm proud of the life I've built, and I'm not about to let anyone take that away from me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. My entitled brother tried to claim our childhood home, but I'd already beat him to it. I'm a 33-year-old male. I grew up in a pretty normal family. My parents were kind, hardworking people who always tried to do the right thing. My older brother Luke, though, different story. Luke had this way of making everything about himself like he was the center of the universe and the rest of us were just extras in his movie. Growing up, he was a golden child. It didn't matter what he did, my parents would always find a way to excuse it. Oh, that's just Luke being Luke, they'd say. Meanwhile, I had to follow all the rules, stay out of trouble, and basically fly under the radar. I didn't really care much when we were kids. He was older, louder, more charming. He got the attention while I kept my head down. But as we got older, his entitlement got worse. He started acting like the world owed him everything, especially when it came to family stuff. There was this one time when our grandfather passed away and left me an old watch. It wasn't valuable, but it was special to me. A couple of months later, Luke borrowed it without asking and wore it to some party. I didn't even find out until I saw it in a picture on someone's social media. When I confronted him, he just laughed and said, "Relax, it's not like you even wear it. What's the big deal?" Stuff like that happened all the time. Fast forward to adulthood, and nothing really changed. Luke stayed in town while I moved away for work. He used that as some weird badge of honor, like he was the dutiful son because he stuck around. Never mind that he wasn't doing anything to actually help my parents. He just liked having the moral high ground. He'd throw it in my face at family gatherings too. Well, I'm the one who's here for mom and dad, not off chasing some corporate dream. He'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear. Never mind that I helped out financially when my parents needed it. Things really started spiraling earlier this year. My parents decided they wanted to sell the house and retire to Florida. It made sense. The house was too much work for them, and they wanted a simpler life. When they told us about it, I thought it was a done deal. They planned to sell the house, split the money between Luke and me, and move. Simple, right? Not with Luke involved. Luke went nuts. "You can't sell the house," he shouted during a family Zoom call. "This is our childhood home. You're just going to give it away to some stranger." He kept going, saying how unfair it was because he was single and needed the house more than me. "Danny doesn't even live here. What does he need it for? He's got some fancy job and his own place. I'm the one who's here. It makes sense for me to have it." The thing is, Luke wasn't helping maintain the house. He wasn't mowing the lawn or fixing anything. My parents were doing all of that while Luke lived nearby and barely lifted a finger. But because he stayed local, he thought the house was automatically his. My parents didn't push back too hard, which annoyed me, but I didn't say much at the time. What Luke didn't know was that I had already bought the house. Months earlier, when my parents first mentioned selling, I offered to buy it outright. I didn't want to live there, but I thought it'd be a good investment and a way to keep it in the family. My parents liked the idea. It was an easy, no-hassle solution. We didn't tell Luke because we didn't think it would matter as long as he got his share of the money. But as Luke kept pushing, it became clear that he thought he could just claim the house for himself. He even started moving in before my parents were fully packed. One weekend, I flew home to help my parents sort through their stuff, and when I walked into the house, it was chaos. Luke had brought over boxes of his own things and started rearranging furniture. "What the hell is going on?" I asked, looking around at the mess. Luke grinned like he'd just won the lottery. "I'm moving in. Makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, you're not going to live here." "You don't own this house," I said. "Not yet," he replied, completely unfazed. "But mom and dad get it. It makes the most sense for me to stay here." I glanced at my parents, hoping they'd shut him down, but they just looked uncomfortable. "We're still figuring things out," my mom said softly. Luke kept acting like the house was his. He'd show up whenever he felt like it, even if my parents weren't home. He brought over his friends, claiming he was getting a feel for the place. At one point, he threw a full-on party there without telling anyone. My parents came home the next morning to find beer cans and trash everywhere. "That's it," I said after hearing about the party. "We need to talk." I called a family meeting. Luke showed up, acting like he was doing us all a favor by gracing us with his presence. Before he could start in on his usual speech about why he deserved the house, I cut him off. "Let's get one thing straight," I said. "The house isn't yours. It's mine. I bought it months ago." Luke's smirk disappeared. "What are you talking about?" I bought the house from mom and dad. It's legally mine. You don't own it. And you don't get to decide what happens to it. For a second, he just stared at me. Then he started laughing like I just told the world's funniest joke. You're kidding, right? There's no way mom and dad would sell it to you behind my back. I pulled out a copy of the sale agreement and handed it to him. Believe what you want, but the paperwork doesn't lie. He grabbed the papers, his face turning red as he skimmed through them. This is bullshit, he shouted. You went behind my back and screwed me over. I didn't go behind your back, I said. I made a fair offer, and mom and dad agreed. That's it. This isn't fair, he yelled, turning to our parents. How could you do this to me? I'm your son. I've been here for you while Danny's been off doing God knows what. My dad finally spoke up, his voice calm but firm. Luke, you've done nothing but make this harder for everyone. Danny stepped up and made things easy for us. You've just been creating problems. Luke stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. But it didn't stop there. After the blow-up at the house, Luke went full-on unhinged. He started showing up uninvited to the house like it was still some kind of open negotiation. One day, I caught him going through the garage, rummaging through boxes of stuff my parents were still sorting. What the hell are you doing here, Luke? I asked, trying to keep my cool. Just grabbing some of my stuff, he said casually, like he wasn't trespassing. Your stuff? This is mom and dad's stuff. And now it's on my property. You don't live here. You're seriously kicking me out of my own house? He shot back, his tone dripping with mock disbelief. It's not your house, Luke. It's mine. Get out, or I'm calling the cops. He laughed like I just said the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. But when I actually pulled out my phone, his expression changed. You're such an asshole, you know that? You're just trying to screw me over because you've always been jealous of me. I didn't even bother responding. I stood there and watched as he stomped off, muttering to himself. That wasn't the end of it. A few weeks later, I got a call from a neighbor who said a realtor had been poking around the property, saying it was about to go on the market. At first, I thought they had the wrong house. But when I called the realtor, they confirmed that Luke had contacted them. He'd told them he was the owner and was looking to sell fast. I was livid. I called Luke immediately. What the hell is wrong with you? Don't start, he snapped. I was just getting things in motion. You're obviously not going to live there, so why not let me handle it? Luke, you don't own the house. You can't sell something you don't own. Do you realize how illegal that is? He acted like I was the crazy one. It's not a big deal. I was just testing the waters. Chill out. I hung up and called my lawyer. We sent Luke a formal cease and desist letter and made it clear that if he kept pulling this crap, we'd press charges. You'd think that would have been the wake-up call he needed, but no. A few days after the letter was sent, I got an alert from the security cameras I'd installed around the house. When I checked the footage, there was Luke standing in the driveway with a group of his friends. They were carrying cases of beer and acting like they were about to throw another party. I drove straight to the house. When I got there, they were already setting up in the backyard like they owned the place. What the hell do you think you're doing? I shouted as I got out of my car. Luke turned around, a beer in his hand and that smug grin on his face. Relax. Danny, we're just having a little get-together. This isn't your house, Luke, I said, my voice cold. You and your friends need to leave. Now. Oh, come on, he said, rolling his eyes. It's not like you're even using the place. Why do you care? I care because it's my property, and you're trespassing. Leave, or I'm calling the cops. When he didn't move, I didn't hesitate. I called the police right in front of him. Luke tried to act like it was no big deal, laughing and joking with his friends, but when the cops showed up, his mood changed real quick. I pressed charges this time. He spent the night in jail, and while it wasn't enough to fix everything, it sent a clear message. That incident finally got through to my parents. They started holding Luke accountable, which was something they should have done years ago. My dad told him in no uncertain terms that he was on his own from now on. No more bailing him out, no more making excuses. After that, Luke backed off mostly. He still made the occasional passive-aggressive comment at family events, but he stopped showing up at the house or pulling any more stunts. The house has since been rented out, and I've moved on. Luke and I don't talk much these days, and honestly, that's fine by me. Some people just don't change, and I'm done bending over backward to keep the peace. It's funny though. For all of Luke's talk about being the one who deserved the house, he never lifted a finger to actually earn it. He just expected the world to hand it to him, like it always had before. Not this time. Not anymore. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. My ex-girlfriend destroyed my car and left it abandoned. I sued her. Now, she accused me ruining her life. I'm 28, and up until a few months ago, I was dating Amanda, who's 27. I thought things were fine. She was a bit self-centered, but I figured I could handle it. Her family was another story, though. They'd come over to my place and act like it was their own, use my Netflix account, or just borrow things I own like they had a right to it. Take my car, for example. It's a 2018 BMW 3 Series, used but in perfect shape. I saved for years to get that car, and Amanda knew exactly how much it meant to me, but she never really got it. She'd laugh at how attached I was, roll her eyes whenever I told her I didn't want anyone else driving it. It's just a car, she'd say, like she couldn't understand why I'd care. Her dad was the same, telling me I was too sentimental. I should have spent the money on something smart like real estate. But I didn't care what they thought. This car was mine, and it represented years of work. That's the context. Now, here's where things went sideways. A few months ago, I had a work conference in another city for a long weekend. I asked Amanda to watch my cat and pick up the mail while I was gone. I didn't think much of it, assuming she'd spend a quiet weekend at my place. Well, I was wrong. The second night I was gone, I got a text from a mutual friend, Kevin, asking if I'd lend Amanda my car to go up north with her friends. What? I texted back, totally confused. He responded by sending a photo of Amanda and her friends, grinning and posing in front of my BMW on a mountain road. I called her right away, no answer. When I finally got her on the phone, she brushed it off. Relax, she said, laughing. We're just taking a little road trip. I'll bring it back in one piece. I was so mad I could hardly get words out. I told her to turn around and come back immediately, but she just laughed it off again, saying I was being dramatic. According to her, it's just a car. You weren't even using it. And that was that. She hung up, and I was left sitting in my hotel room, seething. The next day, she called me again, but her tone had changed. She sounded rattled. There was a little accident, she said. We hit a guardrail, but it's not that bad. We're fine, but the car. Well, it might need a little work. She said it like it was no big deal, like she just bumped into a shopping cart in a parking lot. When I pressed her for details, she got defensive, saying, it's not totaled or anything. We're leaving it in a safe spot, don't worry. And then she hung up on me again. The minute my conference wrapped up, I booked an early flight back and got home by late Sunday. I didn't even wait to unpack. I just grabbed my keys, got in my friend's car, and drove to where Amanda had left my BMW. I found it on the side of some deserted road, looking like it had been through hell. The front was smashed, the bumper hanging off, and there were dents all over. Inside, it was a mess of fast food wrappers and trash. It was clear her little accident was anything but small. I called her again, furious. She finally picked up, sounding annoyed, as if I were bothering her. I figured you want to handle the insurance stuff since it's technically your car, she said. I didn't want to get in your way. I told her exactly what I thought of that excuse and hung up. On Monday, I called my insurance company. I explained the situation, including that she took the car without my permission. They told me that because of that, I had grounds to file a police report for unauthorized use, which would make her liable for the damages instead of me. I thought about it for a while, wondering if it was too extreme, but the more I replayed our conversations, the clearer it became. Amanda didn't care. She hadn't even apologized. So I filed the report. When she found out, she went ballistic. She showed up at my place, banging on the door, calling me every name she could think of. She accused me of ruining her life over a stupid car. Your dad was going to pay for the repairs, so I don't see why this has to be a big deal, she yelled, acting as if I'd gone way overboard. I didn't flinch. I told her we were done and that I was going through with the legal action. That's when things got interesting. Over the next week, her family and friends piled on, texting, calling, messaging me on social media. They couldn't believe I was doing this to her over a car. Her dad called and actually asked me to post a public apology on social media to clear Amanda's name. He said she was devastated and that I was being unfair for holding her youthful mistake against her. I told him his daughter wasn't a kid and that this wasn't a mistake. She deliberately ignored my boundaries and then wrecked my property. He acted like I was speaking another language. A few days later, Amanda's sister showed up unannounced. She wanted to take my cat. She actually claimed Amanda was closer to the cat than I was, and that he'd be happier with her. When I said no, she called me selfish and said I was keeping the cat just to hurt Amanda. I had to physically block her from coming in before she finally gave up and left, muttering insults under her breath. But it didn't stop there. Amanda's friends started harassing me online, saying I was ruining her life and accusing me of being petty. One of her friends even suggested I should pay for her therapy because she was struggling with the aftermath of our breakup and the police report. Another messaged me, saying I should have let her keep the car as emotional compensation. It was like they all lived in an alternate reality where I was the villain for standing up for myself. Then Amanda's mom reached out. She wanted me to compensate her for a few items Amanda had left behind in my apartment: a throw blanket, a perfume bottle, and a small vase. She claimed these things had sentimental value. Here's the kicker. I'd bought every single one of those items as gifts for Amanda. When I pointed that out, her mom didn't miss a beat, saying, "Well, they're from both of you, so Amanda should get something out of this, don't you think?" It was like they thought they could gaslight me into feeling guilty. I moved forward with the police report. I told my insurance company everything. They declared the car a total loss, and because Amanda had taken it without permission, she was held liable for the damages. At one point, her dad tried to pay me off to make the whole thing go away, but I refused. This wasn't about money anymore. This wasn't about the money or even the car anymore. This was about Amanda understanding that she couldn't walk all over people and expect no consequences. I wanted her to get it, to realize that just because she and her family thought something was no big deal, that didn't make it okay. The legal process moved forward, and I didn't hold back. The more her family called and showed up, the more resolute I became. Every phone call, every "how could you do this" to her, just reinforced that I was doing the right thing by not caving. At one point, Amanda's mom left me a long voicemail, saying she hoped I'd find it in my heart to stop this madness, and that her daughter was going through a tough time. She said I should consider Amanda's emotional state, and that what I was doing could break her. She actually tried to guilt me, as if I was causing the problem, as if Amanda hadn't completely disregarded my trust and my boundaries. It felt like everyone around her was trapped in her fantasy world where she could do no wrong, and everyone else just had to pick up the pieces. Then a mutual friend messaged me, saying she heard that Amanda was telling people I'd ruined her financially. She was apparently spinning it as if I'd bankrupted her for a single accidental scratch on the car. When I heard that, I honestly laughed. I was done letting their narrative affect me. They could think and say whatever they wanted. Throughout this, I noticed something that stuck with me. Every single time I said no, every time I set a boundary, her family's reaction was the same: outraged disbelief, like they'd never met someone who actually stood their ground against them. They acted as if I were some kind of monster just for insisting on basic respect and accountability. It was almost impressive, in a way, seeing how deeply rooted their entitlement was. In the end, Amanda had to cover the damages. Her insurance rates skyrocketed, and she was left paying out of pocket for the repairs. I heard through friends that she'd been complaining nonstop, calling me heartless for making her suffer over a minor incident. And naturally, she spun the whole thing into her being the victim, saying I'd ruined her life over one little mistake. But by that point, I let it go. I didn't need to win their approval or convince them I was in the right. For once, I wasn't going to explain myself or defend my actions. I'd spent way too long letting her and her family push my boundaries, letting them take advantage and shrug it off. That was over. Since then, I've cut ties with everyone involved. Amanda, her family, even the mutual friends who kept pushing me to forgive and forget. I blocked them all, wiped my hands clean, and moved on. It was the best decision I'd made in years. I finally felt like I was free of this weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Looking back, I can see how all those smaller things, the Netflix password, her dad's constant lectures, the family crashing my Sunday mornings, were signs of a bigger issue. They didn't respect me or my boundaries. And Amanda was just the tip of that iceberg. Now, whenever I meet someone new, I'm a lot more aware of those red flags. I'm done excusing behavior that doesn't feel right, and I've learned that just because someone thinks they're entitled to your time, energy, or property doesn't mean you have to put up with it. If someone can't respect your things, your space, or your time, then they probably won't respect you either. It took losing a car, but I finally learned the lesson, and I'm better off for it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.